There's a lot of bullshit out there, folks, and it can be really easy to get sucked up by the bullshit. Just going to be completely honest with you. There's a lot of things in this world with the way the Matrix has been designed that can easily cause you to, again, become distracted, and you can end up losing a lot of precious time to the vices of the Matrix. So, all the Hollywood bullshit and the worship of false idols, all these television programs, these non-fulfilling jobs, these stressful situations and relationships that we get ourselves in. There's a lot of things that people make contracts with here in the Matrix that end up just depleting not only their energy but their time. It robs them of their vitality, and it never gives you anything back in return. So I've always preached, ladies and gentlemen, about the importance of a assessment process where you really stop and reflect on your life. Reflection is absolutely crucial, and it's something that we don't do enough of here in this world. We're caught up in the go, fast-paced reality of the Matrix where, we're taught at a young age that the only way to get anything good in life is to, pretty much just go balls to the wall and don't stop and don't rest until you get there. We live in a world, folks, where there's just a lack of underlying what's the word I'm looking for? There's a lack of values in this world that end up getting you into trouble. And what I mean by that is we're never taught, ladies and gentlemen, at a young age, how to live life properly. Again, we're thrown into this world and we're taught to chase after things. I mean, hell, they even start filling your mind at, I remember in 3rd or 4th grade, and even before that, the teachers telling me or asking me what I wanted to become when I got older. I want to be who I am now. I don't want to live in the future. And that's really how modern education works to a large extent. It takes you out of the present moment. It has you living in the future. And don't tell me that it doesn't. When you're in 1st grade, you work to get to 2nd grade. If you don't pass the material or if you don't do a good job, you get held back until you can progress forward. You're constantly working in the education system to get to the next level. So you're constantly living, in a sense, in the future because you're always in a process of attainment, trying to get from point A to point B. And I remember even, in 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, my teachers telling me about colleges and, you've got to get all this work done so that you can eventually go to college. And if you don't go to college, you might not amount to anything. And there's just a lot of bullshit programming. So what I'm trying to convey here, ladies and gentlemen, is that there's a lot of distractions that can throw you out of alignment. You are basically the byproduct of a world that took you at a young age and forced you into a specific way of living. I've called this for years the conveyor belt of the Matrix, where you get born and immediately you get thrown on a conveyor belt where you're forced to comply with the conveyor belts. Well, it's bullshit. That's what it is. Let's be honest. The stuff that you have to abide by to get through the system with a passing grade is nonsense. So before you even had the chance to develop an authentic mind of your own, before you had the chance, ladies and gentlemen, to actually develop your own unique and valid view of the world and what your purpose is here in this world, what your life's purpose is, you were thrown into a situation where you were being barked at by people that you barely knew. These teachers, they're strangers for the most part. And you're told that you have to comply with their lessons, otherwise you'll get held back. And they use fear, in a sense, to get you to move through it. Oh, you don't want to get held back. You don't want to disappoint your parents. You don't want to disappoint the teacher. Grandpa's expecting you to pass. I mean, I even knew people growing up that their grandparents would give them large sums of money for getting a certain grade point average and whatnot. Bribery, in a sense, to go through the system. Now, I'm not necessarily judging anyone or trying to paint a picture of, I'm not trying to say that people who went through the system are bad people. I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen, that there's a lot more to life than the distractions that we've bought into, and they are distractions, at least in my opinion. You see, I believe them to be distractions because I know within our perceptual capabilities we have a lot more potential. We have the ability to interact with reality in our bodies and our minds in a much deeper and meaningful way. And you know, now that I think I'm like 31 or 32, but now that I'm a little bit older in life, when I look back, I can see from my more mature perspective how things went wrong for me. It's kind of how that Tool song Schism goes. I know the pieces fit because I watched them fall away. Now that I'm in a more mature state of mind, and now that I've had the experiences with the paranormal, the Kundalini awakenings, you name it, I've reached a certain state in my life where I'm in a very deep, reflective. I'll be honest with you guys. I'm in a very reflective and very deep I'm in a very introspective period of my life right now, where I'm doing a lot of trying to go back in my timeline and remember what happened when I was younger. But now that I look back, and I've been in this state for a long time now, I'm constantly going back and trying to dig through my memories, my muscle memories, my internal memories, my mental memories, all of these things, and I'm seeing, the more I do these introspective meditations, I'm having like these flashbacks in this of this timeline where I'm seeing how things really went wrong for me in regards to my perceptual capabilities, if you will. You see, ladies and gentlemen, if you watch my channel, there's a pretty good chance you know that my message is all about evolving and experiencing the full potential of the body and the mind. This channel is largely about spiritual evolution. Well, spiritual evolution is kind of an inaccurate term because we evolve spiritually by evolving the body and the mind. So this body, in essence, is really about experiencing the fullest potential of what it means to be a human, expanding the perceptual capabilities. And I know from my experiences with the Kundalini especially, that within our abilities, ladies and gentlemen, we have the ability to see a lot more of this. We have the ability to interact with our bodies, our minds in this world in a much deeper way. You see, we only interact with a very small fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum. And this has to do with the repositioning of our assemblage point and the bastardization of what I like to call our metaphysical antennas. Our awareness has been forced into a very specific position. I talked about this in yesterday's videos and a handful of my other videos. So the reason why I brought that up is because, and as many of you guys know who watch my channel, I like to talk about how as we grew up in this system, our metaphysical antennas were at one point more erect than they are now as adults, and most of you guys watching this are probably adults. So as we grow through this system, ladies and gentlemen, our awareness is shifted from its natural progression of where it's supposed to go. Our awareness is supposed to flower, if you will, metaphorically. It's supposed to develop with nature. And this has a lot to do with our assemblage point. It has a lot to do with our chakras, our meridians, the Kundalini, etc. You see, your body was designed to evolve in a very specific way. Well, when you get put into the matrix, that natural progression gets shifted because you start to have to focus on things that are the complete opposite of that. You have to start focusing on assignments, and you know, when you start interacting with the world at a young age, you start to develop the concept of self-image, and you start looking in mirrors and judging yourself. And by interacting with the world, you learn how to, you essentially develop your own internal self-dialogue, which is like the worst thing ever. The internal chatter. We talk about this often here on this channel. Most people constantly are talking to themselves, and most people aren't even aware of it because they're dominated by a specific bandwidth of their mind known as the conscious mind. And when you're in the conscious mind, you're only accessing the front of your mind, I like to call it, and you don't experience the chatter behind the curtain, so to speak. So when you start to do the meditations, you start to realize that, holy shit, there's a lot of bullshit in my mind. But the reason why I'm bringing this up, ladies and gentlemen, is because I'm trying to paint a picture that I brought up the distractions and all this stuff and how it's easy to get distracted in this world. And the reason why I brought up, our awareness being shifted is because these are the distractions, the things that take us out of the full potential of our bodies and our minds. Those are distractions. And it's really easy to get caught up by the distractions here in the Matrix. So let's try to shift this camera to get a prettier view. Again, ladies and gentlemen, it's really easy to get caught up by the distractions. And the distractions really start with your awareness. Again, the school system and all these jobs and whatnot, it forces you to put your awareness into very specific things. Well, it's really hard to pursue. Let me just adjust this. I think you catch my drift. When you're constantly working on things that have nothing to do with your inner development, it's kind of hard to focus on your development. Am I wrong? So, when I was younger, ladies and gentlemen, I always felt like I was part of some type of system that was trying to take me out of alignment of what my true potential was. It was a very deep feeling that never left me as I grew up. And although I experienced some of the brainwashing of the Matrix, as I was younger and more immature, I always wanted to fit in with the popular people. And, it's kind of what you go through when you're like a preteen and you're going through puberty and whatnot. You get thrown into this collective hive mind thing, this mentality when you go through school, and you do what you can to find friends, and you think that you've got to fit in. Well, there was always this deep feeling, this burning feeling that I could never mute. I could never snuff it out. That there was this feeling, ladies and gentlemen, that regardless of the fact that my teachers and my family and whatnot, and everybody for the most part seemed to think that this school thing was the greatest thing for me, I always felt like it was a lie. I always felt like I was being tricked, like it was some type of game. Like a game was being played on me. I don't mean a game as in a fun game. So it's almost like the ultimate form of gaslighting, if you will, when you become more conscious, or even when you have the that inner flame lit when you're younger, and you're experiencing all these emotions, and you're trying to figure out what the hell the meaning of life is and whatnot, and you feel like what you're being forced to do is bullshit. And when you try to express this to your loved ones or people around you, they all tell you that you're either crazy or you just need to get rid of that stuff and you've got to grow up. This is the real world, and all this other, these talking points, these bullshit default autopilot kind of responses that the unconscious masses say to you in response to, your desire to wake up or to experience more in life. Let me move this, you guys, excuse me. Try to find one last position to keep this in. So again, it's the ultimate form of gaslighting, because for the most part, whether people know it or not, they're plugged into the Matrix. The people around you, when you start telling people how you really feel, when you start becoming conscious, you'll come to the same conclusion. You'll start to see how people are plugged in. Everybody thinks they know what's best for you, ladies and gentlemen. That's one thing that I learned at a very young age. Your teachers do, your parents, everybody but you. And it's sad because a lot of people give up on their real passions and they do what their peers think is best for them out of some weird peer pressure paradigm. It's very strange, this culture that we live in. But where was I going with that? I always felt, ladies and gentlemen, that and I don't mean to sound rude to my teachers and whatnot, because some of them were really nice, but I always thought a lot of them were really stupid. They were just like these talking heads. I always felt that the school system was some intricately woven control mechanism to steer our awareness out of where it should be. And it wasn't until my early 20s, when I experienced my first full-blown Kundalini awakening, that the deal was sealed, that I knew that I was right. My assumptions were right. That there is much more to life than we're being told. Kundalini showed me that the mysteries of awareness, that the mysteries of life, the meaning of life, all of these things are contained within our own body-mind complex. And when I bathed in the fountain for the first time in my early 20s, which is just a creative way of saying, when I experienced my first Kundalini awakening, when I bathed in the fountain of youth, I knew then, at light speed, that the Matrix is real, ladies and gentlemen. And that the Matrix operates. The way that it functions, ladies and gentlemen, is that it takes your mind and puts it into a very specific avenue. And you learn to regard that particular avenue that the Matrix put you on, you learn to regard that as the absolute truth. Even though it's a lie, in essence, because it's not a part of the bigger picture. It's just a segmented fragment. It's like one path of a million. Unfortunately, that path that the Matrix wants us to go down is not productive to our well-being, folks. And I'm not saying that there aren't some good things that we can learn from interacting with the Matrix, but it accelerates our entropy, our aging, the self-destruction processes. It inspires us to live these very selfish, backwards, narcissistic lifestyles where we're unconscious of the bigger picture. You see, the problem with this avenue is that it's very segmented. It has nothing to do with the bigger picture. And because of that, it's out of balance. So once I experienced my first full-blown Kundalini experience, I knew then that, okay, the Matrix is real. And it led to this huge journey. And it took me a long time to recover from those experiences. I had a handful of these experiences in my early 20s. They were very, very ungrounding and detrimental to my programmed mind. You see, Kundalini is dangerous not because it's evil. It's because it destroys all of your erroneous beliefs that this Matrix has installed into you. So to all the people who want to say that Kundalini is evil, no. What's really evil are the belief systems that it shatters. Get your shit straight. A lot of you guys don't even know what you're talking about. But long story short, I've been in very deep introspective states of consciousness now for quite a long time, where I'm working overtime to try to go back and relive my childhood experiences. And I've been able, ladies and gentlemen, to actually use specific nootropic compounds, different types of relaxation exercises, in specific forms of mental programming. I've been able to go back and experience a lot of stored memories in my mind. And I'm seeing where and how I'm reliving the experiences as a 31, 32-year-old individual. I think that's how old I am. But I'm able now to go back and look at what happened and see where the pieces used to fit. Does that make sense? So it's just like that Tool song Schism. I know the pieces fit because I watched them fall away. At one point in life, ladies and gentlemen, our puzzle was more put together. And slowly we start to lose pieces. And as the pieces start to get lost, we lose sight of who we were designed to be. And this artificial way of thinking and living and looking at the world is replaced with that once more complete puzzle set. And now we're empty, no puzzle pieces. I hope that makes sense. So you have within you, ladies and gentlemen, and maybe in the near future I'll tell you the specific nootropic compounds that I'm talking about, because there's a couple of them, one in particular, that really can help you, like, just remember things that you thought you it's incredible. When I started experimenting with this specific compound, I was like remembering things from not a month or 2 or 3 or a year, 12 months ago, you name it, a year or 2 ago. I was starting to remember things from like when I was like between 8 and 15 years old. Like really significant things that caused significant traumas in my life, that caused my direction, my natural of where it caused me to go down the reality tunnel of the Matrix. I hope that makes sense. So these experiences, ladies and gentlemen, as we grow up, as we go through the system, and most of you guys have forgotten all of this stuff. These experiences are very significant to the movement of our assemblage point. And you've got to go back and watch my videos on the assemblage point to know what I'm talking about. And it's crucial to understand, because true mind control has everything to do with the assemblage point, its position, and where it's currently fixed, because it does have the ability to move. But as I was saying, folks, and I'm a little scattered today, so excuse me, you have in your mind a metaphoric stick of RAM, random access memory. Your brain is like a supercomputer, and it experiences and catalogs in your subconscious mind all of the experiences, memories, etc. that you go through during your life. There are certain ways to access that RAM so that you can remember certain things that happened to you along the journey of your life up until now at this point. And remembering what happened at a younger age, ladies and gentlemen, or as you developed, remembering your development is crucial to understanding where you are now, because it's what led you to where you are now, ladies and gentlemen. In the same way that the path that you took to drive to your home led you to your house, the path that you've walked up into this point in time led you to where you are now. And the traumas that you experienced along the way, the joys, the embarrassing things that happened, the struggles, the stress, the depression, all of these things have shaped your life by way of moving your assemblage point, your emotional field, you name it. So, as I've been saying for years now, ladies and gentlemen, deep introspection, deep self-reflection, minimalistic meditations, learning to freeze the mind, all of these things are very important as a foundation. If you're truly serious about getting healthy and not just taking supplements and getting exercise and following the system's kind of path of health, the system wants you to just, take your multivitamin and go to the gym every day. That's not being healthy, folks. Truly being healthy is being able to get your awareness to open up into flower so that you can experience more of what life has to offer, more of what your body-mind complex has to offer. True health also, ladies and gentlemen, is the process by which we go back in our timeline and remember all the crap that led up to the point that we're at now. And I'm not saying that everything that happened to you when you were younger was crap. Let me take that back. What I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen, is that the Matrix has this way of it's like, how would I express it, folks? The Matrix, when you're on, give me a minute to try to accurately express this, because sometimes speaking symbolically about these processes can really help the subconscious pick up on it, because the language of the subconscious is largely symbolism. The Matrix throws you on a conveyor belt. It forces you, once that birth certificate's put into the system, you're now playing by the system's rules. You got to go to school, you've got to get your injections, your non-essential medical treatments, all of this crap. So once you start moving on the conveyor belt, let's just say that every 500 miles on the conveyor belt, there's like a checkpoint, if you will, that you have to pass until you go the next 500 miles and hit the next checkpoint. And each checkpoint that you pass while you're unconscious, going through this system on the conveyor belt and interacting with the world and developing a self-image and all this crap, this self-reflection that's not beneficial. We'll talk about that in a minute, because the Matrix wants you to constantly reflect on your appetites, what you need. I've got to have this to be cool, or this, that, and the other. But every 500 miles as you go down the conveyor belt, you hit a checkpoint. And each time you hit a checkpoint, ladies and gentlemen, the concrete of your mind control hardens a little bit. And as you hit the next checkpoint, it's symbolic of that concrete hardening a little bit more. And before you know it, that concrete is hard enough to be used as a foundation to build the framing of the house that you're going to live in. This is all metaphoric. This is a metaphor of you. So now the concrete, the mind control is pretty much solid, but now you need framing on the house, because that mind control needs a nice little shelter so that you can be shielded from understanding the real truth. I hope this makes sense. So every 500 miles, boom, concrete dries a little bit more. What I'm trying to demonstrate here is the mind control getting into your system and taking effect. I'm also trying to demonstrate the assemblage point moving from its normal position that it was in when you were an infant. Every 500 miles, the assemblage point gets moved to a little bit different location. And as you go through the matrix, it finally gets to that point where once you're about 25, the assemblage point is locked in a new position that is completely in opposition of where it was when you were younger. You see, the magic of youth that you experienced, the magic of nature that you experienced when you were younger, was lost because of the movement of the assemblage point. So learning how to move the assemblage point is crucial because it can move back down to where it was. All states of heightened consciousness, all states of altered consciousness, all paranormal experiences, Kundalini experiences, are done by way of assemblage point repositioning. You see, the life that you experience now, where you just interact with hard objects, where you think you're your name and you think you're your job, and your self-worth, you think, is defined by how much money you have in your bank account, that way of living is defined by the current position of your assemblage point. In the most mundanely oriented individual who only thinks in terms of success in regards to money, you name it, can at the blink of an eye have his assemblage point repositioned by, let's just say, a shamanic potion, and that entire way of living and looking at the world can be shifted in seconds because of the new position on the assemblage point. And that's largely why, ladies and gentlemen, shamanic potions, etc., have so much merit. They heal because they move the assemblage point to new positions. They heal because they have the ability to act as jackhammers on hard concrete. You see, no amount of Shazandra berry, regardless of how beneficial it is, no amount of chaga mushroom, regardless of how incredible it is with its large zinc content and its melanin content, regardless of these powerful nutritional constituents, they more often than not don't have the ability to shamanically heal by way of moving the assemblage point. You'll experience a tiny fraction of a movement in the assemblage point, especially if you brew Shazandra properly. Large Shazandra that's brewed properly almost has, I don't want to call it an entheogenic effect because it's more of a stimulant, but it'll alter consciousness, but not like these, shamanic cocktails. If you catch my drift, that's all I'm going to say. I will, however, say that I don't really like to call it shamanism. I like to call it sorcery. You need to read the Teachings of Don Juan, A Yaqui Way of Knowledge by Carlos Castaneda. Read all of those books to learn more about sorcery and the assemblage point and all of these things. A lot of these things that I'm talking about, I got the idea of the assemblage point from Carlos Castaneda, but the assemblage point I had experienced in my early 20s when I experienced my first full-blown Kundalini awakening. So when I read Castaneda's works about, when Don Juan was talking about this assemblage point, it's like, okay, now I have a name for what I experienced. I know that this is real. I know that the shifting of the energy field has everything to do with our perception or lack thereof, our ability to perceive more in this world. So there is a lot of truths. There is a ton of truth, in those books, folks. And every time you read them, you pick up stuff that you didn't see the first time. So certain books are primers. If you want to take my message to the next level, I do give out homework. I don't like to consider myself a teacher, but I like to give out homework at least. You can take this message even further by reading some of these books, and I recommend that you get them on audiobook. Scribed is a great website for $10 a month. You can have tons of audiobooks, and you get the first month free. I love Scribed. You can also usually get an Amazon Audible trial for free, a 30-day, trial for free, and you can get 1 to 3 ebooks or audiobooks for free. And once your trial is expired, you still get to keep the books. Pretty sure every single Castaneda book is available on Audible, but you got to start out with the Teachings of Don Juan. It's in my opinion, it's not the best of the series, but it's absolutely fascinating. So power plants power plants and finding an ally in these power plants, that's something that we're going to talk about in the near future, probably primarily on the Patreon page, ladies and gentlemen. And the Patreon page is an extension of my YouTube channel, where I talk about some of these more sensitive things, like the psychedelics and some of these more, I think you catch my drift. So if you like my message, if you're interested in learning more, go check out my Patreon page. With COVID and all the crap going on right now, I got hit really hard. So your financial support is greatly appreciated. I do have links to donate to my channel below in the description box via PayPal. I really appreciate your guys' donations. Thank you. But where were we going with that? Everything is awareness, ladies and gentlemen. Everything is perception. So, I have a formula that I've put together on how towards the beginning of this video, I think we started talking, ladies and gentlemen, about the internal dialogue, how we talk to ourselves, and how most of us aren't truly aware of this because we're in the conscious mind. I have a formula that I'm going to share with you guys here on the public channel and on the Patreon page about how this works. I've been able to alter my consciousness in ways that are just remarkably incredible. And because of the ways that I've altered my awareness and my perception, I've been able to enter into, again, what Don Juan Matus, the Yaqui Indian sorcerer who taught Castaneda, he called these states of consciousness states of non-ordinary reality. I've been able to put myself into these states of non-ordinary reality in ways where I could learn a lot about myself and my awareness, the mind, you name it. You see, when you enter into states of non-ordinary reality the proper way, and there absolutely is a right and a wrong way to do it, and most people are doing it wrong. When you do it the right way, what happens, ladies and gentlemen, is that your assemblage point is not only shifted, but because of the shift, you are able to almost interact with your mind as if you are a witness. And what I mean by that, ladies and gentlemen, is when you go through the matrix and you operate on the same cylinders constantly, and you go down the path that the matrix wants you to go down, you develop an identity that you think is you that actually isn't. Because again, you're operating in that tiny little avenue, a small fraction of the whole. Now, when you enter into non-ordinary states of reality, whether it be through sorcery, whether it be through even lucid dreaming, you can do it, but that's not the best way. I mean, it's not the best way because it can be incredibly difficult. But through sorcery, through meditation, through entering into these non-ordinary states of reality, folks, also known as altered consciousness, you enter in to this engagement with yourself where you're almost, if you know what you're doing, you can observe your mind as if you're like a critiquer. And what ends up happening is that, again, if you enter these states properly, and I can't stress how much of a fact that there is a right and a wrong way to do this. If you do it the wrong way, you can end up getting burned, getting some mental illness, I'm not going to lie. But if you do it properly, ladies and gentlemen, you can witness your mind operating on the same cylinders that it does, because it's been on the same rat wheel its whole life. And even when you enter into these altered states, the minds keep operating on this in this fashion, but you can enter these states where you can step outside and observe it. And through observing the non-salubrious, non-beneficial way that the mind constantly operates, you can stand back and go, holy crap, that is not correct. Is this really what I've been doing? Is this really how my mind's been operating? How have I not noticed this? This is how deep the mind control is, ladies and gentlemen. This is how deep the mind control is. The mind control operates and functions on autopilot behind our conscious recognition. And until you're able to alter yourself enough to get outside of that conscious, until you're able to alter yourself to get behind, until you're able to enter states where you can observe what goes on behind the veil of the conscious mind, you will always be operating on what I call the rat wheel of the matrix. I hope that makes sense. And if I lose you guys, it's because my battery died. So I'm just gonna say that now. So again, I'm not recommending anybody, alter their consciousness, or, there's safer ways to do this, and there's some more dangerous ways to do this, to alter your consciousness. I'm not gonna lie. Meditation is a minimalistic meditation is one of the greatest ways to do it, without the use of a potion or some type of sacrament. Minimalistic meditation is when you go into meditation not to seek visions, but just to observe your mind. At least that's how I define it. The full body relaxation exercise, the motionlessness exercise, and the thoughtlessness exercises, these are very valid ways of learning to locate what's behind your conscious mind that's operating constantly on autopilot during your days while you're awake, dominated by the day side, dominated by your tasks, your work, all of this stuff. I hope that makes sense. Now you can also enter into states of non-ordinary reality, and while in those states, do the full body relaxation exercise, do the motionlessness exercise and the thoughtlessness exercise and the inner temple exercise, and you can experience just so much that you normally wouldn't experience if you weren't in these states. I hate to tell you, that's just the case. So, I'm in the process, ladies and gentlemen, of a lot of projects. I'm in the process of putting a book together. I'm in the process of excuse me, my wife was just looking at me through the window. It threw me off guard. But I'm in the process of putting a book together. I'm trying my best to take all of these concepts and put it into a coherent system that you can utilize, like a how-to guide, if you will, on how to do some of these things that I'm talking about. So I can see my dog Mirage peeking through the window. It's funny. But where was I going with that, ladies and gentlemen? There's so many things that I want to say. I don't want to make this video too long, but there's so many things that I want to say. There's so many things that I wish I could articulate properly that just won't come out. It always comes out as a word soup. But yeah, you guys, I'm also in the process of, I've been telling you that I'm going to share the inner temple exercise with you for a long time. I've developed my own. I learned the inner temple exercise from reading Philip Cooper's books years ago. I've developed my own system, a modified inner temple system that I don't necessarily think is better than his, but I think with the current condition that we're all in here in the Matrix, it can be used by certain people with better results than with working with the elements contained within the inner temple. So a lot of ceremonial magic, Western magic, Kabbalistic magic has a lot to do with the planetary spheres and the elements, ladies and gentlemen. And although this stuff is very powerful, there's certain prerequisites that we need to get out of the way. There's certain things that we need to do to exercise our mind of the real demons, which is the programming in our minds, before we start to worry about, working with the elements and working with the planets and working with spirits and all this other stuff. So I'm going to share with you guys a very simplified version of the inner temple that incorporates different symbology and different things that I think again, I don't think it's better. I think that you can use both. I'm just letting you guys know what's on the plate for future videos and whatnot. And I'll probably share the video on how to do the Philip Cooper inner temple exercise as well. I mean, pretty much every single book that he's written has that exercise in it. And I think the cheapest one that you can buy is the Candle Magic. Candle Magic is a really interesting book on magic. Candle magic done, Philip Cooper has got amazing books on magic. I think that Candle Magic is more of like I don't want to call it an encyclopedia. It's a very good book, but it's not his best. I'll just say it that way. So Basic Magic's a good one of his. The Magician, Basic Sigil Magic. So we'll talk about those in the near future. Excuse me. I don't want to babble about that right now. Those pieces of material are absolutely beneficial, however. And that's why I bring them up somewhat regularly on my channel, especially his book, The Magician. And it's spelled with a Magickian, The Magician. The K on the end, when we spell magic with a K, when magic with a K on the end, Magick represents magic, not the magic that, I can't speak, holy shit, excuse me folks. Magic with a goddamn K on the end is there to show you that it's not theatrical magic. And magic with a K on the end, most people follow like a Aleister Crowley definition of magic, which was his definition of magic became so famous when he said that magic is the art and science of creating change in conformity with the will. It seems like every goddamn book on magic nowadays just takes Crowley's ideas and makes their own. They use his ideas as a scaffolding, his definitions and terms, and they make these bogus books on magic. And that's why I love Philip Cooper's books. He doesn't you can tell he knows what he's talking about, and he doesn't just regurgitate and parrot what everybody else is doing. You see, the occult world, especially here in 2020, is such a garbled mess of gobbledygook. 99% of the books on magic are rot full to the brim with superstition, or they're clearly written by desperate people who are LARPing and they just wanted some quick money. It's pretty easy to see. Anyone who's actually experienced the shifting of the assemblage point, anybody who's reached gnosis, Gnostic states of consciousness, anybody who's experienced true magic can tell when someone's full of shit when we're reading these books on magic. So my simplified definition of magic is a system of self-mastery, and it's a set of tools that we can use that can help us get from point A to point B in a very corrupt world. It's a system. In the same way that I talked earlier about the conveyor belt, how there's checkpoints every 500 feet where your mind control gets solidified. Well, magic, if you truly initiate yourself on the path, and it's a self-initiation process, not a group initiation process, regardless of what everybody fucking thinks out here. But when you start putting yourself on the self-initiation process, if you do it properly, every 500 feet, there's a little bit of solidification. Every 500 feet, boom, there's a little bit more solidification. You're building on the successes that you experienced prior. Now, evolving yourself through the system of magic is much more beneficial than evolving yourself or devolving yourself by going down the Matrix's predetermined path for you. At least that's my own opinion. But I guess it just depends, ladies and gentlemen, on what you want to experience in life. I want to experience as close as possible to the full potential of my body and my mind, because I know that only through that can I give the world my best. I want to unlock the mysteries of my body, mind, soul, and the world around me. I don't want to live in a shell of confusion. I don't want to reflect in my personal character, my body, and my soul what the masses are reflecting. They're reflecting pure evil, pure narcissism. You can tell me I'm judgmental, you can tell me I'm being a dick, ladies and gentlemen, all you want. It doesn't matter to me. It gets to a point where you see things for what they are. A lot of people in the New Age community and a lot of people here in 2020, we're being preached by the authorities that tolerance to everything pretty much is what we all need to be doing. Love yourself, regardless of the fact that you're 50 pounds overweight. Love yourself, and you should love yourself, but you should love yourself enough to actually change now, and not just live in an unoptimal way, just because. Love yourself, even though you smoke 20 to 50 cigarettes a day, and just keep doing it your whole life. Everything's okay, and all this bullshit. No. the collective hive mind of humanity, their assemblage point is in a very fixed location, and that's why pretty much everyone that you talk to, for the most part, they're pretty much the same. And I don't mean the same in the sense that they're the exact same person, but they're all following the same. They all operate on the scaffolding of the matrix programming, which is you live in a world of hard objects. You think you're pretty much the apex predator. That human beings are highly evolved and work's the meaning of life and all this other bullshit. And with the collective hive mind assemblage point mind programming of the matrix, you believe specific things about aging, and you developed a very, god damn it, excuse me folks, I keep knocking this thing around, I'm sure that's nauseating to watch. You developed a what I like to call the self-recycling vampiric system. The self-reflecting vampire system. Again, after about 40 minutes, I start to slur my words. Excuse me, folks. Now, I mentioned this a little bit ago in the video, so I'm just we're gonna talk about this, and then I'm gonna wrap things up because I'm starting to get a little thirsty. I talked earlier about how the matrix, when you go down that conveyor belt that we talked about, every 500 feet that checkpoint hits, which represents the mind control solidifying a little bit more until you learn to identify with your programmed state once that concrete's completely dry. Because as the concrete dries, ladies and gentlemen, you lose your true identity by way of the assemblage point moving. But it teaches you by interacting with the world as you observe things on the conveyor belt, ladies and gentlemen, by observing the people around you, by interacting with them, by watching movies, by going through the school system, you learn to reflect. You create a self-reflection program that operates constantly in your mind. But it's not a good reflection. It's always about you, what you need to, fit in with people, what you need for this, that, and the other. I need this $500 purse. I need all this. I need that, blah, 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 blah. You develop this reflecting quality about your appetites. And it's always about worldly things. Now, I'm not saying that worldly things are bad in any way, shape, or form. The flesh is a very divine thing, regardless of what all this bullshit here in the New Age community wants to tell you. But we develop a self-reflecting mechanism in our mind that operates on autopilot, that drains us, because it causes us to always reflect on what we have in comparison to what other people have. And I remember doing this. I catch myself at times doing this still. It's like, oh, man, I wish I had the money this person does. And it's amazing to see how many idiots here in the Matrix have tons of money. I've always said that the Matrix rewards stupidity. When you start becoming conscious, you might run into some issues, some financial problems, you name it. But where was I going with that? You end up, ladies and gentlemen, developing a reflecting, where you reflect not only on your appetites, but on your shortcomings, your perceived shortcomings. You start to think, oh, I'm not going to be good until I get to this, point in my life, or I'm not going to be good until I get this, that, and the other. All of these things create these deep etch marks in your subconscious and your conscious mind, because they more often than not lead to beliefs. And we know through studying and researching and interacting with the subconscious mind, folks, that the subconscious mind takes beliefs and instructs your inner mind to create that in your reality. The subconscious mind is the vast labyrinth of your mind that you are no longer in contact with. Because again, you operate on the conscious, the very tip of the iceberg. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to wrap this one up, folks. I should probably make this video longer, but I fear that if I do, the quality is going to lack. So until next time, thank you for watching this video. And until next time, peace be with you all.